Somewhere I Belong, Chapter 21, Part 3. Come on, Twy, think you can do that again? Dash asked. I can't, she said with a pant. That potion I took only works once and she was cut off as she felt a small wave of pain. I'm almost out of magic, she said as she sat down. Lyra, Rarity, think either of you can do something? The two unicorns looked at one another and shrugged. Sorry, Dash, but this is way too advanced for some pony like me, Lyra said with a shrug. Likewise, Rarity said as she tapped on the red surface. So we just sit here and do nothing? Applejack yelled. Dash yelled and her amulet morphed into two daggers and she started to slash against the shield. The mare kept slicing at the shield in hopes of seeing a crack. Isaac was dodging left and right, away from the clone's attacks. The man took a moment to collect himself. He dropped to one knee and examined his beaten body. The slice mark that had formed across his chest hadn't stopped bleeding. The original stallion stepped forward and held up his sword. These blades are laced with my own magical energy, which is preventing your blood from coagulating, he said with a smirk. You have two options. 1, give up, or 2, bleed to death, he said with a chuckle. Then I'll just have to end this quickly, the man said with a chuckle. Isaac lunged forward with the knife in his hand. One of the clones scoffed and lunged forward with the sword aimed for the man's chest. Isaac quickly sidestepped the sword and slashed the clone across its chest, causing it to turn into a cloud of smoke. Well, look who's finally getting serious, the stallion mocked. He snapped his fingers and 10 clones appeared beside the stallion, each with their own sword. The human gulped and was fighting to keep himself awake. He took a defensive stance as the group of clones charged at him, with murder in their eyes. The mares summoned their element weapons and started to beat against the red wall. Pinky gave a massive swing with her hammer and a small crack appeared on the surface. Hey, a crack, look! The mares stopped their attacks and looked to see a small crack. Okay, every pony, focus on that weak point, Twilight said as she focused what little magic she had left. The group took turns enlarging the crack. The group then saw a flash of blue light, then looked to their right to see Princess Luna in a flowing blue dress. I apologize for the late arrival, every pony. My sister and I were meeting with the Griffin King. What is the emergency? She asked as the mares pointed inside the prison. Luna's eyes shrank and she quickly walked over to the side of the prison. Her horn and right hand clenched into a fist and started to glow, a dark blue, and she slammed it into the fractured wall. A large crack sprouted up the wall and spread out to the others. Inside the prison, Isaac was getting beaten left and right by the copies. Isaac panted and felt his vision starting to blur. Shit, blood loss, not good, he thought as he was given an uppercut. Isaac coughed up a mouthful of blood. 2 copies slammed the back of his knees, which made him drop to the ground in pain. The human fought to keep conscious as the copies took turns kicking at him. They stopped as the original stepped forward and his horn glowed. Isaac felt himself being lifted off the ground by an invisible force. I have to say, you lasted a lot longer than I thought you would, he said with a smirk. Isaac spat a mouthful of blood on his face and smirked. Skull wiped the blood off his face and slammed his fist into Isaac's stomach. The stallion looked closer at the man's exposed body and cocked an eyebrow. Looks like you're hiding a few things. Let's see those nasty scars of yours then. The unicorn's horn started to glow, and Isaac felt a burning sensation wrap around his body. The ponies watched in horror as bits of his flesh was being ripped off of him. Skull's eyes shrank as the spell ended. Isaac's chest had a massive scar running from the top of his right shoulder down to his left leg. A series of healed cuts coated his arms, and burn marks were placed all over his body. What in the name of Celestia happened to this thing? Skull thought in disgust. Isaac lifted his head up with a defiant look in his eyes. Skull then noticed that the man had a large scar over his right eyelid. Isaac's stare bored holes through the dark unicorn. Skull felt a small wave of fear creep over him as he heard a banging noise. The mares continued their bombardment, and the prison was cracking apart. Isaac's mind clicked at the noise. They will knock 4 times. He remembered the mare's words, and grunted. The stallion snapped his fingers, and a glowing red blade appeared in his hand. The stallion let the man go from the grip so that he stood on his 2 feet, while his hands were being held by a copy. Sorry, Isaac, but this is the end. Time slowed. Isaac's eyes shrank as the blade shot forward. Isaac heard a loud breaking noise and looked up to see the red prison collapsing as he felt an incredible pain. The man looked down to see the blade of the red sword enter his chest. The human heard the angry cries of the 6 mares and the lunar princess. The man looked forward and time slowed down. He felt nothing, no pain, no death. Isaac felt his strength leave his body. His mind was losing focus. He looked forward to see the white hooded figure from before. The figure shook its head and looked at him with a scowl on its face. "Honestly, you're pathetic, getting your ass handed to you by this chump," he said as he looked at the black stallion. Isaac kept coughing up blood as the figure stared at him. The white hooded figure then saw the purple crystal necklace that Celestia had given him. "For fuck's sake, no wonder you're so weak," the figure said as he looked at the bleeding man. "I think I'll take this," he said as he wrapped his hand around the necklace and ripped it off of him. Time seemed to shift back, and the figure put a hand on Isaac's shoulder. "You'll thank me later." The black stallion groaned as he saw the red wall collapse. He was staring down 6 enraged mares and 1 furious alicorn princess. As he tried to pull his sword out of the man, he felt something grab his arm. He looked forward in horror to see the human latched onto his sword arm. "Impossible," he said as he felt him squeeze on his wrist. "What are you?" "You want to know what I am?" the man said as a dark blue aura started to seep out of his body. "I'm not telling." As the man looked up, Skull saw that his crystal blue eyes were spliced and had a crazed look behind them. The man clenched his right hand into a fist and slammed it into the stallion's jaw. Skull staggered backwards and regained his balance. The mares looked in shock as the man lashed out at a clone, making it puff into smoke. The human looked down at the magical blade and wrapped both hands around the hilt and pulled it out of his chest. Skull felt nauseous as he watched the red blade exit the man's chest. The human's body started to steam and his wounds started to rapidly heal. The man looked at the blade in his hand and smirked. "Nice sword. I'll take it," he said with a grin. The man's body seemed to be wrapped in dark blue shadows. The sword morphed from its broad physique to a smaller, narrower blade. Isaac looked at the group of black stallions, who gulped. "Now we're going to have some fun." The man bent his knees, and he launched himself with the sword drawn at the group. One of the copies froze as Isaac appeared in front of him and slashed it across the chest, causing it to disintegrate. The human looked ahead at the other 8 stallions. "Who's next?" he asked as he raised the blade. The stallion started to chuckle and soon broke into a laugh. His horn glowed, and the 8 copies vanished. "Now this is a fight. It's like hunting," he said as a sword formed in his hands. As Richard Connell stated, "Man is the most dangerous game," Isaac said as he ran forward, swinging the sword rapidly at the stallion. The mares, including Luna, were frozen in shock and fear as they saw the man fighting the stallion that had almost killed him. The lunar princess then felt a familiar chill run down her spine. "Wow, look at Isaac go," Pinky said in a cheerful tone. "Kick his ass, Isaac," Dash yelled. "Twilight Sparkle," Luna said as she looked at the lavender mare. "Yes, princess?" "Get ready to use the elements on Isaac," she said in a serious tone. The mares all cast a look of shock at the dark blue alicorn. "Why? We don't even know what they would do to him." "I know this magic. It's foul and dark, like evil itself." "What?" "Isaac has a good amount of my magic stored in his body," she said with a gulp. "Yeah, so?" Dash asked. "Who else's magic does he have then?" she said in a fear-filled tone. Twilight's eyes shrank at the realization. "Nightmare Moon," she said softly. Luna nodded as the mares gasped. "I've been visiting Isaac in his sleep, and through his dreams I've seen an alternative side of him that you have not yet witnessed. A much darker side," she said with a sigh. "I only hope that it doesn't come to that," she said in a low tone. Isaac and the stallion locked blades again. The stallion could feel his legs starting to buckle and him being forced back. "What's wrong? What happened to all that talk earlier?" Isaac said in a malicious tone. The man's blade started to glow, and a dark blue blur could be seen from the man's sword hand. The blast knocked the stallion back a good 30 feet. Skull felt himself tumble on the ground. Isaac grinned and raised the blade. Skull got to his feet and realized that he was low on magic. He heard a cracking sound and realized that his mask was starting to crack. Isaac lunged forward with the sword in hand. Skull looked forward at the oncoming creature. "I am no match for this human," he said in a defeated tone. The man ran towards the stallion with murder in his eyes. As the mask cracked in half, showing his face, the stallion closed his eyes and waited for the eventual pain. Skull felt a small pinch on his neck and opened his eyes to see the man standing right in front of him with the tip of the blade just touching his neck. The stallion also noticed that the man's eyes shifted back to their original shape, and the dark blue shadows that once danced across his body vanished. "That was you in the forest, wasn't it?" Isaac said, keeping the blade on his neck. "Yes." "Why didn't you kill me then?" I was an easy target, dangling by a piece of rope attached to a tree branch, with a manticore only 10 feet away. He said in a cold tone, "Why didn't you just let me die right then and there?" he asked. "Too underhanded for my taste," Skull said in a rough tone. "I like to give my prey a chance to escape. I can honestly say that you are the first to best me like this," he said with a small grin. "So go ahead. Claim your trophy," he said as he closed his eyes. The man looked down at the blade and back at the stallion. He raised the sword up and slammed the butt end of the blade into his stomach. Skull gave a sharp cough and fell forward onto his knees. As the sword vanished in a flash of blue light, Isaac started to walk away from the stallion when he heard a cough come from him. Why spare me?" Skull asked in a defeated tone. "A life for a life," Isaac said as he looked at the defeated stallion. "My debt is repaid," he said as he continued walking. "Wait," Skull said as he slowly stood up. He was panting heavily, and a trail of blood could be seen coming from his mouth. "As leader of the Red Talon Assassination Society, I hereby grant you the name, the Predator," he said with a sigh. "You have my word that neither I nor any other member of my guild will ever set foot in town again," he said as he placed his right hand over his heart. "Should you ever need a hand with something, don't hesitate to look us up," he said as he tossed him an amulet with an eagle talon etched into the stone. Skull's horn flared and his body vanished in a puff of red smoke. Isaac let out a sigh of relief. He walked over to the broken mask and picked up the 2 pieces. The man was then bombarded by a pink blur that tackled him onto the ground. He looked up to see a sobbing Pinkie Pie wrapping him in a death grip hug. "Oh my gosh, we were so worried. We thought you were dead. Then when you got stabbed, and then you went all glowy and..." "Pinkie Pie!" Dash yelled. "Let him breathe for Celestia's sake," she said as she pointed at the man's blue, oxygen-deprived face. "Sorry," Pinkie said as she let the man go. Isaac took several deep breaths and looked up at the mares. Twilight walked forward and put a hand on his shoulder. "Isaac, I'm sorry about what I said earlier. I was out of line," Twilight said as she wiped the tears from her eyes. "It's fine," he said with a sigh. The ponies then noticed the man's now heavily scarred body. "What did that guy do to you?" Lyra asked as she crouched down next to him. "All those scars." "They were always there. I just hid them with plastic surgery," he said with a sigh. "Why?" "I was ashamed of them, along with everything else," he said as he hung his head in shame. "Like what, hun?" Applejack asked. Isaac bit his lip and let out a long, drawn-out sigh. "I lied to you guys. I'm not 22. The mares looked at him in surprise. "My real age is 26. "What?" Pinkie yelled. "Humans have 4 birthdays in just 2 months?" Pinkie looked at him in confusion. "No, Pinkie, I just lied about my age," he said in a shame-filled tone. "Now why did you go and do something like that?" the farmer asked. "I was ordered to by my government. When I was discharged, you see, He was cut off as a massive wave of pain ripped through his body, and he started to cough up blood. "Isaac, are you okay?" Luna asked as she knelt next to him. The ponies looked in amazement as bright blue magic sparks started to shoot out of his mouth and into the air. "What's happening to him?" Spike asked. "Magic backlash," Luna stated as she scanned the human with her magic. "What's that?" Applejack asked with concern present in her voice. "It happens when a unicorn, or human in this case, uses too much magic at once," Twilight clarified. "Judging from what happened, I'd say Isaac used more magic than what his body could handle." "Will he be okay?" Fluttershy asked. "He should be fine. He just needs to rest for a while," she said in a calm tone. The ponies all let out a sigh of relief. The mares then scanned their eyes over his scarred body. "I can't even begin to imagine what he's been through," Rarity said as she buried her face in Spike's shoulder. The dragon put an arm around her and comforted the white mare. "We will take him home," Luna said as she lifted the man's arm over her shoulder. As she turned around, the mares all let out a gasp. Luna looked at the man's back, and her eyes shrank as she saw a massive image of crossed swords. One was jagged, curved, and dark red, while the other was light blue and straight. The 2 swords crossed behind a shield with a 7-pointed star on the shield. Luna's horn flared, and the 2 vanished in a flash of blue light. The mares looked at one another with worry. Spike helped Twilight to her feet, and the group started to walk back towards the small town. The Lunar Princess found herself inside the man's home and laid him down on the couch in the living room. He was still holding the 2 pieces of the mask. She gently took it from the human's hands and set the pieces on the table in front of the couch. The princess snapped her fingers, and a blanket appeared above the man's body. Luna looked at the man and let out a sigh. "You have many secrets, Isaac. she said as her hand started to glow. I'm sorry, but I must learn more about you. The blue mare gently put the glowing appendage to the man's forehead. She closed her eyes and focused her magic. Luna saw several images flash into her mind. The princess covered her mouth to muffle her gasp at the images she had seen. If the human suddenly woke up, she would wrap him in a comforting hug, like a mother would hold a child after they had scraped their knee and reassured them that everything would be okay. You poor, poor man, you have seen horrors that even I dare not think of, Luna said as a small tear rolled down her face. The princess exited the home and teleported back to the pristine white castle of Canterlot. She quickly made her way into her sister's bedroom to see the white goddess brushing her hair. Ah, Luna, what happened in Ponyville? She asked in a concerned tone. An assassin was paid to kill Isaac. Celestia's eyes shrank at the news, and she stood up. He is fine, and he defeated the assassin. So Isaac killed him? No, he let him go. Celestia looked at her sister in confusion. I don't understand it either, sister. But there is something we must discuss, she said as she sat down on her sister's bed. Celestia cocked an eyebrow and sat next to her sister. The assassin used a time spell to revert the human's body back, she said as she hung her head. He has many scars and a symbol on his back, she said as her hands shook. What symbol, Luna? She asked as she wrapped an arm around her sister. A pair of crossed swords, one good and one evil, behind a shield, Luna said in a low tone. A star was portrayed on the shield. What is troubling about this? It was the impossible star, Luna said as Celestia's eyes shrank. A 7-pointed star. The white princess pulled her sister into a warm hug. I saw into his mind, and I saw terrible, horrible things done to him, she said as her horn flared. A projection showed several images flashing across the room, images of men and women falling to the sounds of gunshots, and screams of pain filled their eyes. A single tear rolled down Celestia's cheek as Luna's eyes were filled with tears. We must speak with him and the other elements as soon as he awakens, she said as she wiped the tears from her eyes. Luna looked at her sister in surprise. She walked over to a chessboard and looked at it with a blank look on her face. 6 white pieces stood on the board, each shaped like the element bearers. It is time for the final piece to take its place on the board, she said as she held up a single black piece that was in the shape of a man and had no definitive features to it.